editor. Okay, first of all, stop using Honkai inventory lobby music, right? It's been overused, right? Run something else.
This will be a romantic story like none that has come before. You think so too, right?
As long as I don't extinguish, the flame chase will never end.
Just as your name suggests, and bear this world, behold so dear, so long. Kaslana.
He is among my most exceptional students.
The Deliverer boy looks naive, but he knows exactly what everyone wants.
Lord Phainon is kind and friendly to all his companions. But there's always a sliver of pain in his smile.
Snowy. It always feels like he's carrying too much.
I know the strength of this man, and because of that, he is worthy to have my back.
Perhaps that is why he will lead humanity till the very end.
Accepting others' wishes and turning them into his own wishes. Not all heroes are such blank canvases as him, and that is why the world places such great hopes on him.
And that man, he was never a failure.
So let's just jump right into my final thoughts about Phainon. I think this unit has got me up on the up and up for a very, very long time. Alright, we have tested bro out with pretty much every single team under the goddamn sun. Alright, we've talked about his light goons, we've talked about his tracers, his relics, his eidolons, you know, as well as basically each and every single one of his respective team comps. So these are now going to be my final thoughts. Whether you should be pulling, who should be pulling, what do you expect after you pull for him, vertical investments, future prospects, DPS ranking, etc. Right? So editors, just slap on some chill B-rolls in the background. If you want to do a Uma Musume, like a top right hand corner, and HSR in the top bottom left corner, you know, just do whatever it's gonna be, right? So I'm just gonna be yabbing on over here. My final thoughts about Phainon. So let's just proceed, right? First things first, the biggest question of them all, and I think this unit has created a divide amongst the community, because at the end of the day we have like two very extreme groups of people, which is, oh my god, Phainon is insane. Phainon is able to do them 0 cycles, 1 cycles with like no cost, 4 stars version 1. Absolutely insane. Damage is off the charts, you know. Doesn't need any tribute, doesn't care about wheelchair, doesn't care about tricycle, open up team building composition, and all that kind of stuff, right? So those are like the Phainon praisers. But on the other hand, there's also the other group of people which also believe, oh my fucking god, Phainon is dog shit, you know. Phainon just, you know, I can't even get a proper 0 cycle without a speed tuning for the life out of me. Bro needs Sunday, bro needs S1, bro needs everything to be baby fed to him, you know. How can he even compare with my Caceres? How can he even compare with my, you know, my Acheron, with my E2 Sail Wolf, you know? Oh my god, my Tribute wheelchair team literally clears the Phainon. So I feel like he's a unit that has created quite a lot of divisive opinion as to whether or not he is in a good standing amongst the version 3 DPS, because he is a version 3 DPS, and I feel that it is rightfully so to compare his value to other version 3 units. Like, I wouldn't compare Phainon with like fucking what, My Day. Okay, not really My Day, sorry, Blade, right? I wouldn't compare with Jingliu. I wouldn't compare with like version 1 or even version 2 units. If you are going to be pulling a unit in version 3, I think the bare minimum should be his benchmark with other version 3 DPSs. So that means everything from Dherda, Aglaia, My Day, as well as Caceres, right? And the upcoming versions, we are going to be getting Saber as well as Archer. I think in that sense, I feel like Honkai for this entire version 3, I think they have done a really, really good job when it comes to balancing out the roster of DPS units. I do feel that they probably learned a lesson on like what they did with Acheron and how ridiculously it changed the impact of what it costs for the HSR meta. And now they were like a lot more conservative amongst the ramping, right? The pace in which your version 3 DPS is coming out. You can see this from like your Aglaia, from your Dherda, from a Caceres, My Day, and now even Phainon, to the point where if this unit is not completely fucking busted, you are gonna be causing a issue where people think he's too weak. Because he doesn't straight up just kill every single other DPS, right? People think he's not good enough. Why would people even need to give a damn about this unit when he doesn't straight up just Powercreep the entire roster, which is basically what Acheron did to the previous version, right? I think this pace, it is a good present, at least in my opinion. I don't like it when like within a short time frame, every DPS that comes out just does whatever the previous DPS is doing, but like better, to the point where it makes it very easy to pull. It makes it very easy that, oh, the next DPS that comes out is straight up the way better DPS. You just pull, because it will eventually lead to the whole, you know, power creep, greedy and stupid, all the kind of stuff, the big who hangs. I'd rather have like the community having issues with regards with, yeah, Phainon is probably not as crazy as he is. Pride-Win listed him as what, tier 0, tier 1, and tier 0.5. And people are like complaining more about his lack of strength instead of his overabundance of strength. And I think this is a good precedent to set, because I don't think a DPS that comes out on launch, especially not without his dedicated supports, should be in a caliber of its own, especially before, as we, you know, 3.5 is going to be Servidra. We know her debuffs and everything. I don't think Phainon should be in the same playing field as Caceres. If anything, if Phainon right now, like, can you imagine if Phainon right now, he performs to the same length of like feat of strength, his performance across the endgame content, in the same level of playing field with Caceres plus Hyacinth, what do you think is gonna cause the power spike imbalance when Farina comes out? Alright? So in the grand scheme of things, going forward in like 3.5, 3.6 and everything else, I think from where he stands, he's at a very, very healthy pace. I think he's a very healthy DPS. Not something that can be said for, you know, his story, but I think he's in a very, very healthy spot. And I think at the bottom line, you are absolutely right in the sense where if you really have yourselves dedicated in like your version 3 teams, right? You already got yourselves your Dherda, you got yourselves your Caceres, or if you still want to play your version 2 with Acheron because you got your Silver upgrade, you want to play with Blade, right? You want to play with the wheelchair, then by all means you can just skip Phainon, because I don't really think you're missing out on too much. And even if Servidra comes out to be very, very synergistic with Phainon to the point where Phainon is going to be dealing a lot more damage than where he is right now, maybe even comparable to post Hyacinth Caceres. So version 3's strongest DPS is going to end up being Phainon Servidra and Caceres Hyacinth. Even if that was the case, I still don't think you're missing out on too much, because at the end of the day, you're going to be pulling for 2 different units. You're going to be spending an upwards of like, what, 200 pulls for 2 different 5 stars. And that's not including Signature Icon. That's not including Servidra Signature Icon. That's not including the fact that you're going to be building all these different units with all these different relics. So if you are comfortable with where it is right now, you don't have to go out of the way just to build like pretty much like a brand new team. Because let's just be real, if you pull Phainon and you have no intentions of pulling Servidra, you're essentially playing with a DPS that would never unlock his true potential, which would make him feel inferior in the first place, especially when compared to the other version 3s, which has their counterparts in which is going to be their best teammates, right? So if you do want to pull Phainon, I would just say, I even say this and my already says and everything, right? Be prepared to commit to him. And I think that should be the case for like all these DPSs. Be prepared to commit to them, not in the sense where, okay, I'm going to give them the best relics, I'm going to give them E2, E5, E6 or whatever, but more so like their teammates. Because I think the best example is that right now, Acheron, right? For the longest time, Acheron without Jiao, she was like kind of getting cooked. And then Silver came along, which sort of reduced the pressure. But it's gotten to a point where the difference between E0 and E2 is not as crazy as compared to an inability to get their teammates. I feel like team building is still the #1 priority when it comes to any sort of a DPS performance, be it if you're playing DOT, Super Rig, Phainon, Castrace, whatever it's going to be, right? So those are going to be my thoughts on whether you should be pulling for Phainon, right? Yeah, with that out of the way, after you pull for Phainon, then what, right? S1, E1, teammates, team builds, how are you going to split up the things and everything. I think if you have already decided that you have you already pulled for Phainon, I think the most important thing is to be aware that he doesn't necessarily need Tribby. And I think that is an excellent thing. He can finally break free from the tricycle. He can break free from the wheelchair. So you can now actually dedicate your Tribbies into the other team. You can give your Tribbies into your Castrace. You can give your Tribute into your D-Herda. You can give your Tribute to you can give your Tribute to Acheron nowadays. Because Acheron plus Silverwolf, okay, E2 Silverwolf and Tribute, ridiculous amount of stacks, right? So it opens up this slot where you are less restricted by Tribby. Tribby was kind of like the bottleneck in version 3 because almost every single version 3 DPS they wanted Tribby. And Phainon is one of those who said, okay, you know what? Fuck, I don't need her, right? It's fine. I'll walk my own path, and then eventually, you know, when other stuff comes out in the future, we'll see how it goes. So that is the first thing to note. You can now diversify your team building options. But if you are already someone that pulled for Phainon, and you also got a version 3 DPS, this means that I'm pretty sure if you're like a day one player, you would have gotten like your version 1s, version 2s as well. You do need to allocate and decide which one would take a priority, because eventually when the game goes forward, 3.5 is going to be DOT as well as Servidra, right? So obviously the best choice for any Phainon pullers is, you know, get yourself the Servidra. But at the same time, we're also getting the fake collaboration banner. So I don't think if you pull for Phainon, especially a E0 S1 Phainon, into, let's just say you want to do, you know, wife up Saber, right? You get yourself a Saber, E0, S, whatever, and then you still want to get Servidra, it will be very, very tight, especially if you are free to play. So I would say between meta, right? Between meta as well as, you know, what you enjoy, always focus on the enjoyment, because meta, it always goes away, right? And if Saber banner goes away, it's going to be cooked. To be fair, the Fate banner lasts for like at least to the end of 3.6. So it's going to be a long ass fucking banner. So if you are not interested in Archer Signature Lycone, and also newsflash, Archer Signature Lycone is kind of like whatever. Like for example, I have my free-to-play account Bob, right? Bob is probably getting E0 S1 Saber just because, you know, he's green and stupid and he wants to, you know, wife up Saber. He's gonna get the Archer Lycone with or without the pulse, but I don't even think Bob is gonna be able to use Archer because Bob doesn't have Sunday. Bob doesn't have Sparkle. Bob doesn't have a lot of decent units. So even if I do get an Archer Signature Lycone, I don't even think I can make use of the thing, considering the fact that Bob already has Castrace, Bob has D-Herda, and now Bob is gonna have, like, you know, Saber. It feels very little incentive to even concern yourself with what Archer has to do in that account, especially as a free-to-play, right? Especially a free-to-play, because you need to limit your team building options when there are like so many DPSs in the horizon, especially when you do not have the necessary supports to make them work, right? And I would never ever recommend people to pull specifically just for the sake of making that unit work. So for example, I would never pull Sparkle right now just to make Archer work, because you're looking backwards. And I always want to look forward. Be it HSR, be it you know, Uma Musume, any gacha game, always look forward, because it's always forward thinking, right? By the time you are pulling backwards, you are already like playing catch up, and the new meta is gonna come around, and then you're always constantly chasing, and it's just never gonna feel as good. So that is pretty much it. I think definitely between S1 and E1, the S1 is very, very important, right? Damage uptime, the amount of additional base speed to help you get through to the clear cycles, very, very nice. You could use 4 of an Aeon, you lose around 30-ish% final damage output. It is what it is, and also it's kind of cheap. It's cheaper compared to the E1. I don't think E1 changes that crazily. I think it still is a pretty decent change, but not as crazy unless you're dedicated to E2 Phainon, right? E2 Phainon is like, whoa, you know, E2 Phainon, that's the one, right? That's the one. If you want to get your hands on something, that's probably the one. Don't spend money on gacha games. It's very, very bad. So that's pretty much it. Build-wise for Phainon, I think after testing out every single possible team, because I ran the exact same team, right? I ran the exact same team of, or rather exact same build, which is gonna be this thing over here. Okay, excuse the green screen, because the green screen is not gonna look like something. This is gonna be like my Phainon build. which is gonna be, you know, 115 speed, 3k attack, 81% crit, 215 crit damage. So this is gonna be tuned towards the Sunday, right? This is with the assumption of Sunday. I would say the most, okay, I think at this point we don't need to have the green screen anymore. Okay, I think the most important thing is Phainon with the lag of close to, I would say at least 90%. If you do not have like 90% crit rate, oh my god, he feels awful, guys. He legit, oh my god. When I was running Bro on 81% crit rate with like the Bronya buffs, 3B buffs, right? No one buffing his crit rate. Holy shit, when he misses the crit on the enhanced skill, you are like losing so much damage. Because the multiplier is 1140%, right? It's absolutely fucking ridiculous multiplier, especially on the bounce. And you take a very long time to actually charge up back into the enhanced skill. So if you miss the crit on that particular moment, you're cooked, buddy, right? It's over for you, right? So definitely need to bring this crit rate up if you're not going to be using him with Sunday. Whether you're running him on speed over attack boots, I mean, I was running Bro on DDD the entire time, and because of his built-in speed buff, I always managed to get myself the second action, regardless if I'm going to be able to hit the 134. So I think attack boost is definitely going to be the way to go for now. If you want to try like setups where you run him before Sunday or like before Bronya, you could, but you are going to be sacking quite a decent chunk of damage, which this kind of stuff can also be circumvented by just simply getting hit, right? Because Phainon can also gain stats from getting hit. So I would say attack boost Phainon is a very nice. Routine Arena or Arcadia, I've been running Routine Arena, completely no issue. The difference is less than 2%, so doesn't really matter. And then ideally you run the physical damage build, but once again, it's like less than 2%, right? So very minimal differences for the 2-piece. 4-piece, Wave Shred is absolutely going to be the best in slot. If you haven't farmed it, you know, just might as well just get it, because Saber is also going to be using this if you're going to be using Saber. So that is pretty much it. Tracers, well, I don't really have to talk about it. Light launch is done. Okay, so that is pretty much his build. And whether you should pull one last little segment before we bounce off, that's going to be his future prospects, right? Team building and everything, you can check out the previous videos. For now, we will talk about all of his different teams. His future prospects as a unit, right? Back to the green screen. Whoa, wait. I mentioned it briefly in like one of my, I'm not sure if my clip channel got it. I feel like the lifespan of Phainon is gonna follow a similar lifespan with a lot of our DPSs that we have seen for the past 3 versions, which is at the time of launch, they will always be performing very well. And then they will scale better and better because they will introduce more and more support units, right? Your teammates to work alongside with the DPS that just launched, right? So they always release the DPS, then they release the supports, and then, you know, for casuals like the sustain, made them better, they perform better, and then it goes very nice. And then eventually, so it's like DPS is here, it launches a little bit up as time progresses, and then eventually when the next DPS comes out, he's gonna be here, right? He's probably gonna be stronger at a baseline compared to the DPS, which has a support. It's a little bit like Uma Musume, like your legacy, you know? After getting training, right, you're gonna get stronger and stronger, you improve your stats, but eventually when you end your career and you become like a brand new legacy Uma, right, your base stats are gonna go back to 0, but you do become stronger for the next rotation. So that is like, in my opinion, how like versions work in HSR. Your next rotation of DPS, whenever they first launch, they will not be as strong as the peak of the previous DPS, which already gotten all the upgrades. They got their speed buffs, endurance power, they got all the teammates, everything, right? The relics, everything. It will never be as strong on launch, but it doesn't matter because number one, they are going to get stronger as they release more supports, and number 2, they will shield the endgame environment for the newly released DPS. And that has been the same formula every single time, and Phainon is not going to be an exception, right? So right now, where Phainon stands, he's as is, not too bad, not too shabby, and then Saridra, and then whoever comes after Saridra, he's just gonna get stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. Eventually, by the time the next DPS of the next version, right, this could be version 4, the start of version 4 or the middle of version 4, another archetype comes out, right? And then when the next archetype comes out, people are inevitably gonna compare, right? People are inevitably gonna, oh my god, you know, everyone said Phainon is bastard, and then this brand new DPS, you know, you can do like 0 cost runs with like 3 cycles because they shield the environment. They make it such that the DPS works with like almost every single unit because they haven't released the supports for the new DPS that's gonna be released, right? So this cycle will just keep repeating. And Phainon is just going to be one small part of this cycle. If you are okay with that fact, then I think going into the rabbit hole that is like team building for DPS it's gonna be fine. The worst thing you can possibly do is just you keep putting DPS after DPS after DPS after DPS after DPS. You non-stop pull DPS, and then it's gonna lead to a point where your account has nothing left to support your DPS after the shield environment goes away and after the shield support goes away. Because when these things goes away, what's left of the DPS is just like an empty essence of like nothing. And then you're gonna think to yourself, okay, you know what? I only invested very little, right? I invested like E0, S0 DPS. Fuck it. I didn't really lose that much. Then you chase the next DPS and the next DPS after that. But the thing is, whenever you keep doing these like cycles of like chasing DPS, it's almost like in Uma Musume, you're building up you're spending your energy, right? But you're not building up your legacy. You're not building up like your legacy Umas to make your future Umas even stronger. So you're gonna be left in this stagnation where your account is only gonna look like nothing but DPS. So whether this is gonna be Phainon, whether this is gonna be casuals, whatever it's gonna be, whatever DPS is gonna be, it's just gonna stagnate because you have no supportive casts to make them stronger as time progresses, right? And then eventually you will run out, right? If you are spending money in this game, I don't think it's gonna matter because you're just gonna keep swiping or whatever, right? But eventually, if you are free to play, you are gonna run out of the Jades to keep up with the amount of DPS supports, right? If you just only pull DPS and not just support this R-type, right? You only pull Phainon, you skip Servidra, you skip the S1, you only pull an E0, S0 Phainon, and then like after like, you know, a couple of patches, he starts to fall off because you didn't give any sort of vertical investments, and then go for the next DPS. That is when I think the account gets like very, very hard to... It will get very difficult. Because you're constantly chasing, right? You're chasing without the dedicated vertical investments to whatever DPS you want to play, right? So those are gonna be my thoughts for the future prospects, and I guess just a little bit into like the insights of how like pooling plans work in HSR. Because at this point, I feel like I can already kind of see like the formula, right? They release a DPS, make it look super strong because they shield the environment. The shield environment goes away. They shield for the next DPS, and then at the same time, they bring up the next support, right? They bring up the next support for the previous DPS to make them feel even stronger. So it's like the same formula over and over again. And I think where Phainon stands right now, he's no DPS is a mass pool, right? There's no such thing as you are breaking your account if you don't pull a Phainon. It will never. You only truly like, okay, not really even truly. That's because at the end of the day, it's a gacha game, right? It's just a casual little gacha game with like memory chaos. You can still play your story and LCU and everything. But at the end of the day, if you are gonna be constantly divesting your attention into like everything else, it can get very, very difficult, right? So that is pretty much gonna be my final thoughts. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'm trying out a new format of video today. I'm not sure where my editor is gonna put this green screen up. Right, okay, wherever he's gonna put in, that's gonna be that. Word of the day is going to be Nah. Join YouTube, join Discord, join to the use code POKE for 10% off gamer subs. All the best for gacha pools, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.